Garage is a top-down action game. You're dropped into a dimly lit area and you'll need to find weapons to survive against the mutants within that area. The first half of the game is very enjoyable. You won't have an experience point type progression system here, but rather you'll really rely on progressing through earning new weapons. You'll first have access to an axe, and then a pistol, a shotgun, a submachine gun, and then another machine gun. The combat is very satisfying, especially because when you shoot the mutants, arms and limbs start flying off along with their heads, so it's a real bloody mess and very satisfying. The axe is great to use in the beginning, especially to use its charge attack, because that'll make quick work of many of the mutants, while it also helps you conserve on ammo right in the beginning of the game. Enemies can hide in the shadows on the map, so when you open up a door, you really need to be on your toes or you're going to quickly be overrun. It's also really encouraged to just attack any of the walls within the game, because you never know when you're going to stumble across a hidden area which has a couple medkits or maybe a new weapon for you to use. There are 3 bosses within the game and I rather enjoyed fighting them. They range from large enemies to defeat to creepy ones. The shooting feels good and I enjoyed fighting the mutants. You do encounter humans later that use guns, so that totally changes up the tactics that you're going to need to do with combat. With mutants, you really just need to worry about a bunch of melee type attackers that'll just start rushing you. Humans, on the other hand, will have a wide variety of guns and sometimes grenades that can really make combat a lot more challenging. Visually, I like how this game goes for a very 80s feel. And what I mean by that is it just reminds me of a John Carpenter flick. The game keeps up a fun and intense pace for about 3 hours, and then sadly, about halfway through the game, the second half of the game is just weaker compared to the first half. Within the second half, you'll have this forced stealth sequence where all your weapons that you just obtained for the last few hours are all taken away from you. It becomes a lot of trial and error throughout this sequence, and not in a good way. The game is at its best when you're fighting mutants. It doesn't really seem built to be able to tackle these stealth type missions. Though the stealth sequence isn't too bad in hindsight, within the moment while you're actually in that part in the game, it's extremely frustrating and you start wondering why this was put into the game. After this point, the game continues to descend into frustration as you encounter these new tower-like enemies that you have to fight within a robot facility. They aren't as interesting or as fun as the mutant-like enemies that you had to fight for the beginning half of the game. I do appreciate that they tried to add some enemy variety throughout the experience, but it just didn't work here, as when you're fighting the mutants, that's when the combat is at its best. You need to watch out and make sure that they don't surround you. You need to make sure that you're switching to your weapons and not reloading them to be able to take out everyone that you see. It has a really good intensity to it. The stealth sequence and the towers really take away from what this game does very well. I did have the game crash on me during Chapter 8, and I did have the game checkpoint me with enemies behind me, so that when I died and had to go back to that checkpoint, the enemies were still there and they got a beat on me really quickly, so they were able to take me out. It was really frustrating because the only way to really get through this is to kind of finagle my way through it or restart the level, but I didn't want to lose my progress. I eventually did find a way to proceed, but the whole checkpoint system for this part was just a little odd, but it was just 1 point during the whole game. Garage is the definition of a mixed bag. The first half is very enjoyable, while the second half is just very inconsistent. I would recommend getting this game on a sale and then play the game until you get annoyed with it, because after the quality starts to dip, it doesn't get any better for the second half. I do wish that the game had some type of survival mode or challenge mode to just add to some post-game content to the game, because right now there's just the main campaign. Overall, check this one out on a sale. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out some of my other ones. If you want to help support the channel, check out my Patreon links at the end of this video and the description down below. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.